It's the weekly ahead of Everton's third Premier League game of the season. I'm delighted to have Warren and Paul, as usual, with us, talking about everything that's gone on so far and what's to come. In what's been, to say the very least, a disappointing start to the first week of the season, aside from a stunning win over Doncaster, where Beto scored his traditional goal against them. But we'll start off by coming to you first, Paul, about all this. Start of the season couldn't have got much worse, could it? Losing 3-0 at home to Brighton, going to Spurs, maybe a little bit different because we don't have a great record down there, do we? I think we've only won once in ridiculous amount of years. I'm pretty relying upon you to say a stat on that. I don't know if I'm putting you under any pressure. But in general, defeat against Brighton, don't want to touch too much on this because we did the weekly and everything on that last week. But any sort of momentum that we felt going into Goodison's last season was evaporated quite quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of typical Everton start to the season, wasn't it? Because there was this growing sense of optimism that we finished last season on a bit of a high with that sequence of home runs. We finished quite high on the table, given the background of the points deduction, and some of the signs in the summer look quite encouraging. Young players with potential. So I think everyone was looking at the Brighton game as a winnable fixture against a team with an inexperienced manager who'd never sort of coach teams to that level before, and then it just went
he's
so
about
bad.
12 years old as well.
Exactly. Yeah, he's just got a GCSEs and everything, and he just. It was such a frustrating game because we never really laid a finger on Brian after the first 5 minutes or so. I think we were one shot on target the whole game. And we talked on this pod before about the added pressure of the final season at Goodison. I think everyone wants us to get off to a winning start at Goodison, at least try and carry some semblance of an unbeaten home record for as long as it was possible to do so. And that all evaporated in the first game. And it was quite concerning as well that, towards last season, the club and the fans were united in the way we haven't been for quite a number of seasons, I would say. And then when you get the situation where you look around you, on 90 minutes, just after Holgate comes on, and the terrace, the whole stadium is like 3/4 empty. Players getting booed when they come onto the pitch, and you think, well, this is not the ideal start of the season that we wanted. So you then kind of looking towards, what can we do at Tottenham now? To go back to your previous point, last time we beat Tottenham was at Wembley, wasn't when Calvert-Lewin scored the goal, the 1-0 win, but Ancelotti was the winner, was the manager, 2021 season, I think.
Is that at Wembley, did you say then?
At Wembley, I remember Tottenham had to play a season at Wembley whilst the new stadium was being built.
I don't know. No, I think they went to the new stadium earlier. Anyway, yeah, you're right. I think that's the last time we went there and won.
And before that, I'm struggling to think the last time we won, probably about 86, 87 or something like that. So you're hoping for a response, weren't you? You're hoping at the I think we talked before about grinding out a result, taking a 0-0, getting a point, getting the season started, and we just didn't even come close to doing that. The key moment for me was, you look at Tottenham's fourth goal again, when Van der Ven gets the ball on the edge of his penalty area after Dwight McNeil passes to him. He set off running. Dwight McNeil is gasping for breath trying to catch up with him. He's about 20 yards behind after 10 yards. No one puts in one tackle on Van der Ven. He runs from his own penalty area to our box and sets up a song for the fourth goal. And that kind of, to me, showed how the lack of effort, the lack of resilience, the lack of competitiveness that you need to survive at this level. So that to me was really worrying concern. And then post-match, you're looking at, 7 goals this season, 2 games. Well, hang on. I think we have the 4th best defence in the Premier League last season. The defence was the key to us being able to build some momentum last season and keep ourselves out of any relegation difficulties. So that was a real big concern for me. Not being able to get a shot on target, also a big concern. Calvert-Lewin just, to me, has not looked interested in the 2 games we've seen so far this season. Dwight McNeil's been off the pace as well. So, and you're looking at some of the players like Dyche. I think, well, why not bring them on a bit earlier? Why not give some of the younger players a chance to have an impulse here? We brought in the summer, so that was also something that made me quite unhappy. And then the culmination of the scenes at Euston Station. Now, it's quite interesting. The 2 players who were picked on were Mopé and Holgate. I'm not condoning that in any way, but you can understand fans' frustration. You've gone down to London, you've seen a non-performance, and it's not the way to get your message across, I don't think. But you cannot. I can understand why there was a degree of resentment about that performance. So it really put pressure on the Doncaster game, I thought. And for the first 45 minutes, I had some concerns about how that was going to go. And how do you view that game? Is it the ultimate insult to Doncaster field, a weakened team against Everton? I don't quite know how to interpret that. Or they can't seriously be saving their best players for their clash against Port Vale. I just don't buy that at all. But at least in the second half, we showed a bit of flair, we showed a bit of ingenuity. I thought NDI had a superb second half. And let's just hope now it's a win, it's a goal, it's a bit of momentum. We need to carry that into Saturday.
Warren, you've been away in the States, haven't you? So I don't know whether you've been away from the controversy that's happened over, pretty much what happened at Euston train station when the players and fans were coming back from London after that 4-0 battering from Spurs. First game, like Paul's just been discussing there. How did you feel about the? I don't know. Return to Goodison. There's a pressure on it. I felt there was a pressure on it first game back. Last season coming, every opponent we have, it's going to be the last of them at home. Brighton's not traditional as an Everton fixture at Goodison, but I'm personally counting down the games, thinking how long have we got left here. Every single one of them feels that little bit more precious to me, and that little bit more pressure on them.
Yeah, it did feel like that against Brighton. Watching it, as you said, I was away and I was watching it whilst I was away, and it did come across that way a little bit weirdly. But I think that's something that I've said all along. I do think there'll be a Goodison bounce. I do think we'll get to a period in the season where we'll get a run of form, especially at home, because we just will. We do anyway. We tend to do regardless of whether it's the last season of Goodison or not. So I feel that will happen regardless. It just feels a little bit like we're finding our feet, doesn't it? And I've been really back and forth with my emotions in terms of where I think we are and where I see us going for the rest of the season. And I made I tweeted sort of a tongue-in-cheek comment to Dyche's extreme comments, and it is a little bit extreme at the minute in terms of the knee-jerk reaction, if you like. But having said as well that whilst it's a little bit extreme in terms of we're going to go down and we're awful and I can't see there's 3 teams better, that were worse than us. I don't think that's the case, but I do think there's very good reason to be concerned. And one of the things that I know you've said many a time, Dave, in the lead up and the build up to the start of the season was the goal scoring. And it's been worrying for me the first 2 games in the sense of we haven't looked particularly threatening. And that's been a real concern. And then when you throw into the mix like what Paul said about we're not defending either, a team that has been known, like Paul said, they're the 4th best team in the league last season defensively for keeping clean sheets and things like that. That's where the concern comes. But in terms of Goodison, I think it'll come to a point where we get sort of the midway through the season and it'll be, we know it's our last season. We've got it. I think the Brighton game was possibly a little bit of it was hyped up more, and there is always more of a focus anyway when it's the opening day of the season. But it'll get to a point where things will become normal and it'll be a bit of a reality check when we look at the league table or when we see results. And I think ultimately, though, the players and ourselves, it's a fact of life. We know it's the last season. What can you do about it other than just go out and perform? And they have to start performing. I'm not here, and I'm not particularly I'm not gonna, for me, it's not an excuse. The pressure, God, I mean, if I was it's so cliche to say this, but if I was a player knowing it was the last season of Goodison, being the fan I am, I would thrive off every game. I'd want to perform. I'd want to be out there. I'd want to grace that grand old stadium for all it's worth for however long it could. And the players need to do that as well. It's as simple as that. I do think over the course of the season, things will, again, very cliche to say this, but I do think things will even itself out. I don't think we're a bad team. I know we're not a good team by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think we're that bad either. And I think that we will start picking up points. We will start doing Goodison things like what we used to. We will start winning games like we used to last season, particularly the back end. They've just got to find that rhythm, and they've got to find that, again, it's just I know we've talked ad nauseum about this and listening to the weeklies and different things since the Brighton game, but the stubbornness in the sides he picks. I have got time for Dyche. I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's done a fantastic job, but it's hard to maintain that enthusiasm for him, and it's hard to maintain the enjoyment of supporting Everton when what we've seen in the first two games is what we're becoming used to. And I think that's what's brought a lot of the fans' frustration as well. And like Paul said, not that we're condoning any scenes or any abuse targeted towards players, either in public or online. But quite frankly, this is what we are so used to, and it's just frustrating. It's so annoying to go into the start of every season and knowing you're virtually going to do what we've done the start of this season. I'm looking forward to a season when we start well again, and we haven't had that for a long time. And also as well, you just look at every other team and you think to yourself, they're signing X, Y, and Z. They look like they're playing good football, and exactly before. Everyone knew exactly before that Brighton game, for instance, how it was going to go and how we were going to play compared to them. And you just think to yourself, just give us a little bit of something to grasp at the start of this season. This is such a big emotional high point of a season. And they haven't done that so far. I do think they will eventually, and I do think things will change. But the trouble is, Dave, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it, it just makes Saturday's game against Bournemouth massive already. I don't want to use the phrase must win, because it's certainly not that 3 games in. But how important does it feel already in late August? And it shouldn't be that way.
No, I think that's an excellent point. That we sort of hinted on that, didn't we, Paul, when we were just before starting? What's going to be ahead, given that there's an international break as well, which I can't stand and never known why you get that in sort of in September every single season. Complete waste of time. I wish Lee Carsley all the best, by the way, former Blue, great Blue for us. I wish him all the best. What he has to do with England would be great if he got the job himself, I think. Just going back on what we were talking about there ahead of the season, I personally think, Paul, that Dyche missed the trick there in that first game, given the new signings we had, and Dyche and Lundstrom were on the bench. I thought there was a really good chance to keep that sort of momentum, that positive feeling you've got going back to Goodison for the opener. The alternatives he's put in to be quite mild aren't exactly essential players when you've got new signings that you've purchased for quite a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, I think, as I said, before that, we went to the start of the season with feelings of optimism. When I saw the team line up at 2 o'clock, those kind of things, optimism kind of starts to dissipate a little bit. When I saw Michael Keane playing in the back four, that's always a massive concern. When you got 6'6" Jake O'Brien who can come in to be a threat to set pieces, I just didn't understand the logic. Sean Dyche seems to be the only person who thinks Michael Keane can offer Everton something. Fans who watched Everton season after season have known Michael Keane has never been good enough to play for Everton. And if we can get him out during the transfer window, that would be superb. Yeah, and then you're looking for maybe 1 or 2 players with a bit of flair, a bit of creativity. So Ndiaye was one I thought, give him a chance from the start, give Lindstrom a chance from the start. So. Now, when I saw Decore was lining up, well, hang on, he got 1 goal in 14 games last season towards the end. He's not the same player as he was before the injury. And I just kind of think persisting with him in that role behind Calvert-Lewin, I just don't think it's going to work out this time around. Jack Harrison, he tries hard, he makes contributions to the team, but it's hardly a name that whets your appetite with excitement when you see he's in the starting lineup. So Dwight McNeil also someone else whose goals have kind of dried up quite a bit towards the end of last season. So as Warren mentioned before, to be goal scoring is a big concern, and you have to have some creativity, some vision, some flares, or try and do something different to create chances for your forwards to score. So yeah, the team selection certainly wasn't the one I was hoping for. I understand why you went Ashley Young right back for the first game of the season. I can understand it's a big game to throw Roman Dixon into the first game of the season. But as we said in this pod numerous times, why have we still not got an alternative at right back? It's just ridiculous that, until the transfer window is closing and our alternatives at right back are Seamus, who's 35, Ashley, who's 38, 39, and we've got Porto Nathan, who's still recovering from the injury that Dyche gave in the Portuguese holiday. So it really is a source of something that needs to be addressed, and why it hasn't been addressed, I have no idea. I mean, Warren made a really good point there about starting the season off well, about starting the season off with a bit of impetus, a bit of momentum. And I think this year, more than any year, this was the time we're looking for to start on the front foot, to be adventurous, to take chances, and try and get an alternative to our routine 1-0 home victory, to try and get a 3-0 sort of a exhibition where fans would come out, kind of discussing what an entertaining and enjoyable game of football that was. And I think we have mentioned before about, we do have reservations about Dyche being a bit too cautious. I can understand the reasons for that as well, because his methods have been successful. There's no denying, given the circumstances of last season, we did incredibly well to finish where we were. But to me, it's the pressure of the last season at Goodison. I don't want a season where we're grinding out results. I want to be entertained this season. I want to create plenty of memories of this season. I want to come away talking about games where we've come back to win 3-2, games where we won 4-0, and we're talking in a real positive frame of mind. And I agree with you. I think the Bournemouth game has suddenly assumed a level of importance that I hadn't quite anticipated it was going to, because if we were to lose to Bournemouth, then taking the League Cup out of the equation, our next 2 away games, away against Villa, away against Leicester. So you could see a scenario whereby 5 games into the season, we yet to get any points on the board, and straight away, that's somewhere as a club, as a fan base, we just don't want to be. So I think it's crucially important on Saturday that we get the win. We've got a bit of momentum, whether you rate the victory over Doncaster or not, I don't know. We've got a bit of momentum from the Doncaster Cup win. Let's take that into the league game. And we're playing a team that conceded 67 goals last season. I mean, Bournemouth aren't exactly the strongest defensively, although I've noticed they just brought Kepa in, I think, Dave, as their goalkeeper. Right, yeah. So assuming he starts on Saturday, that might give them a bit more resilience at the back. They're a team that can score goals. They scored, I think, 54, 55 last season. So I think we have to be strong defensively again. I think Jake O'Brien has to start on Saturday in defence over Michael Keane. And we just really have to create more chances. And the only way we can create more chances is by more creativity. And I think we saw on Tuesday evening, the players with creativity, quite clear at the moment, are Ilian Dyche and Jesper Lindstrom. So I think that Dyche has really got to throw caution to the wind here and settle to win the game, settle to dominate possession, and settle to create chances, and try and get 3 points on the board. And then we can go into the international break, in a more relaxed frame of mind. Even more so if by deadline day, okay, obviously we've got rid of Neil Maupay. If 1 or 2 other players leave before the deadline day, fantastic. And if we bring 1 or 2 players in, I think Mangala's almost over the line. If we bring another signing in as well, that'll be superb. So it assumes a huge importance. And I totally agree with you, Dave. Why we have an international break 3 games into the season when momentum is just starting, when you're just getting back to habits of going to football, and then suddenly there's no game for 2 weeks? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I think ironically, the one thing that might help for us, if we don't get a result against Bournemouth, maybe we need 2 weeks off to try and sort things out. Warren, just on the points there that Paul was making about Sean Dyche, I think it's a common theme that I've always had with him, is that he has limitations in certain parts of what you need from a football manager. And an attacking format is very much one of them for me. It seems to be where his limitations are. It seems to be why he's sort of been a manager that's gone into take issues out, somebody to come in who you can rely upon to save various parts of a season. He did that with us very effectively in the first season, last season as well. He kept us up. I just think you can't keep going back to that, because I think I've mentioned it a few times this week. The Premier League will catch you out. It's not a division where you can just repeat again and again and again, obviously, unless you're a Manchester City side. But as a side that's going to be in the bottom half, let's face it, Everton aren't going to finish in the top half, in my humble opinion. I don't think we're going to finish much close to the top half anyway. I'd like to put it that way. When you've got what you need to go with, we've signed some attacking players. I mean, if you've walked into that club and you're Dyche or you're Lundstrom or even Irabuna, who's been fantastic so far. I think he's been the real star that we've seen so far in his opening couple of games. You're walking into Everton and I'm thinking, these lads have gone there for a chance. You look at Lundstrom, he's come from Napoli. He's come to Everton to prove himself. It feels a little bit similar to me like when we got De La Feu in that season, where you're looking at a player to really get involved, attack as much as they can, get into the box, move forward. It's where I think Sean Dyche lacks as a manager. And he's grown, in my opinion. I was pretty devastated when we first got him in, despite the fact that we ultimately needed him post Frank Lampard. But like I say, last season we ended up in a position where, and the season before that, last 3 years, we've ended up in positions where we need to win our last game or our last couple of games to stay in the Premier League. The fear there that Paul mentioned is if you go into the international break that we're coming to now and you've lost 3 games or you haven't won within those 3 games, you come back and you've got back-to-back aways. Everton can quite quickly find themselves in a lot of a difficult situation where you may be several points away from being outside the drop zone. And look, I'm sounding like, and I just have caused a lot of panic by saying that. I'm trying to keep in my mind that it's not, given we'd only be 5 games into the campaign. But I just feel as if what I've seen so far, we look like we're very far away from getting our first win in the Premier League. Take Doncaster out of the list. In hindsight, that was a decent night at Goodison, and let's hope it got some sort of positive feeling towards these players. But that's for the reason I've talked around it quite a bit there. But that the reason for me is why this game against Bournemouth is crucial.
It is a big game. I think we've made it a big game, both ourselves and the squad. By the way, the start of the season, it's gone, and the way, and talking about the fixtures coming up, and with regards to Dyche, I mean, there's a couple of things for me for him that are either going to make or break his long-term future at Everton, if there is one. And I'll caveat this at the start by saying, we are whoever is in charge. We could get the best manager in the world in charge. We are a lower mid-table team at best. I can't see us finishing higher than 13th, 14th this season, for instance. That would be my prediction. That would be a good season for us this year. So in terms of Dyche and what he can get out of this team, no one could get us higher than that, because that's the squad we've got and that's the team we are. He steadied the ship brilliantly, and I don't want to go over old ground with that. My fear for him is that he's still got at this present time the off the field, should we say, antics going on that caveat, if you like, or give context to the job he is doing. So, for instance, if we had spent 100 million in the summer transfer window and we'd made the start, there'd be rightly be questions about him. There's not those questions for the fact that we've had the off the pitch stuff going on, with the boards and all that sort of thing, and the fact that we know he's not got any money to spend. So he's done very well in the circumstances. And I do think that, and we said this last season, and Les Roberts said this a few times last season, and I sort of picked up on it a lot, is that over 38 games, he is a manager that will keep you in the Premier League. And he will, for my money, he will do that again this season, regardless of how these first 5 games go. The whole marathon, not a sprint, and all that sort of thing. Over the course of 38 games, Sean Dyche will get you to where you need to be to stay in this league.
Just on that one, before you continue with that, just one question I wanted to ask you about what you've just said there. Is that enough? Is that enough for Sean Dyche as he goes into this?
This is what I was going to go on to. This is what I was going to go on to say, because that, for the time being, for me, is great, because that's, I've said for many a time, the goal this season shouldn't be anything other than being a Premier League team by the time we step into Bramley Moore, because if we get relegated this season, that is catastrophic going into that new stadium. We need to be a Premier League club, and I don't care where we finish as long as we're a Premier League club. That is Everton's goal this season for me, because that is where we have to be. Now, let's fast forward. We've only just started this season, but let's fast forward 12 months, 25, 24, 36 months into the future. And he's our manager, leading us into Bramley Moore. And there was a very interesting, I can't remember who it was, but when the prediction show was on, when you lads were in the Denby, and once someone said, I don't think he'll be the manager leading us into Bramley Moore. And that struck a little light bulb in my head, because I just didn't consider that. I just thought, if it was you, I just thought, if we have a good season again, relatively good season in terms of winning games like we did last season, he'll be the manager. There's no questions about that. But if by 2025 we finally get the new ownership in, they've got their own ideas, they see this man playing the way he plays, and then we go into this new stadium and they're looking at it from how do we bring people in, how do we look like a modern, if you like, 21st century football club in this new stadium. I don't know how much that they're going to want that. Now that's a discussion for months and months down the line. It's not a discussion for now. My issue with Dyche at the minute is don't start taking it out on the fans. Don't do your press conferences by agitating, using comments against the fans. Because for me, all the goodwill I have towards him, and still do, his comments about Premier League experienced players, and that's why I'm not playing them, his sort of chirpy and chippy responses to why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? And I get it, because he's proven himself to be able to do the job. But you look at it and you go, you've spent 20 million on a defender there when we've got no money, and you're choosing to play him on the bench. And look, I love Michael Keane in the sense of he gets a lot of stick, and it's not his fault. He's not where we need him to be. But we knew that 5 years ago. And it's 2024 and we're starting the season with Michael Keane in defence, yet you've just spent 20 million on a defender. I can't process that when we're struggling for a right back, when we're starting 40-year-old Ashley Young, when I'm looking at that team that played against Brighton and I'm going, what's the difference between this team and the team 2 years ago that almost got relegated? Where's the new, fresh couple of signings that you play that traditionally you'd always see on the opening day of the season that you go, all right, it hasn't quite worked, but we can see, and that's where when you attack the fan, not attack, but when you agitate the fans with the comments you make in press conferences, they're gonna look to things like that. And I made another very tongue-in-cheek comment on Twitter when I said about Roman Dixon starting at Spurs. I said, isn't it funny how someone with no Premier League experience turns out to be our best player? Dyche shot himself in the foot with that comment because he just made himself look foolish. And he's not foolish. He's a Premier League manager. He did a fantastic job last season. He did a fantastic job post-Lampard as well to keep us up. He knows more about the professional game than I ever will because he's been involved in it. But then he makes that comment and you look at it and you go, mate, you're starting Ashley Young, you're starting Michael Keane, you're starting players that 2 years ago were not good enough and nearly got us relegated. You spent this money and your stubbornness is keeping them on the bench. Now, he might retort to that by saying they're brand new, they need this time to readjust, and once they do, I don't want to throw them in the Lions den because that could make their career at Everton worse and it looked like a Mopé career at Everton, for instance. I get all that, but then don't agitate the fans. And I think that was his biggest mistake leading up to the Spurs game, because as every goal went in, I could just feel myself getting more angry, not at the results. Of course, I'm angry at the results and not at the performance, but thinking, you just made yourself look stupid there with your comments, mate, because you said about how you can't play these players because of Premier League experience. Yet, Tim Adebayo and Roman Dixon are our best two players on the pitch here. And by the way, the coincidence in them two playing fresh, not to do the team from last year or the year before.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily want to throw O'Brien, Lindstrom, Adebayo, all the new lads in straight away. I get that. But I don't see the reason why you can't play Dyche, especially after what he did at Doncaster. I don't care if we can use all, you can only play what's in front of you, and that's again, I'm cliche mad this episode, but again, that's all you can do. And that was the first time, his goal the other night, and I don't care who the opposition is. When was the last time you seen a player pick the ball up in the middle like that and run at speed, direct?
Yeah.
That's for me, that's what Everton's about. It's about not necessarily having the most skill. It's about being solid, putting in a tackle, and when you get the ball, doing something with it quickly. That's what all our great sides have ever done. And we just look so laborious and so passive in our possession in them first two games. It was like, I wouldn't say a spark, but it was just like a reminder of, look, this is what it can be like. And I just hope for his sake, Dyche's sake, that he loses a touch of the stubbornness and he lets a little bit of free rein to the players. I'm not sure about Lindstrom yet. As in, I'm not saying that I'm writing it off at all. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But and certainly it'd abuse him, and possibly Jacob, but I don't see the harm in playing Jacob Ryan. I really don't. You spent money on him, use it, especially when there's more pressing concerns at the back. So as an Everton fan, you love hearing Everton managers be positive. Frank Lampard was great. He was one of the best at uniting the fan base, but ultimately he wasn't good enough for his job. I do believe Dyche is very good at his job, but don't alienate the fans. Don't say things to agitate the fans in the press, because they're your biggest and most prized, one of your most prized things going forward, especially in this last season. The comment that last thing, because I know I've said a lot in this little portion. The comments he made about Goodison when he said, "Oh, what do people expect? They expect us to be heading for Europe straight away just because it's our last season at Goodison." That straight away to me just knocked me for six. Like, I can't believe you're saying this thing. Like, this has been our home for all my life, and you're saying this about our home, as not about Goodison, but about, you know, the team's not going to be good enough just because it's our last season. Be positive, embrace it. Say something along the line. Change your mentality. Well, I don't feel the squad's good enough for Europe at the minute, but you know what? The fact we've got these fans with us, behind us at Goodison, who knows what could happen this season? We'll certainly be trying our best. Why not word it that way? Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm too naive and too positive for my own good. I don't know. I just feel he's got to do certain things, and I think the longer he does the things he's doing now, his team selection, his stubbornness, his chirpyish comments in press conferences, his long-term future will not be there at Everton, because I think eventually there'll be a groundswell of support going against them eventually, because people will just go, do you know what? I've seen enough, and you're having a go at us all the time, or you're saying these things in the press. It's not what I want to listen to anymore. That's how I felt, and I think he's a good manager. You know, people who maybe don't rate him, how are they going to be feeling? That's the way I look at it.
I think there's a naivety there with what you referred to him as when you made that point in saying that, well, you don't know anything as much as he would as a professional manager. That may well be the case, or that is the case for all of us as football fans, unless you're Carlo Ancelotti and you're an Evertonian. The naivety that he come out with in regards to what he said there, Paul, I think it's a really appropriate point, because he's right about none of us are managers. We all have our own opinion, as we do this every single week and talk about these things about our club that we adore. But for him to have that, I don't know, he didn't have the foresight to think, well, if I criticise Everton fans here, this is going to be really, really difficult to climb a mountain that you didn't necessarily need to do. Add to that, I feel as if it's something very anti-Sean Dyche that he's done to himself. I think when he's been at Brighton, look, he's been at Everton for long enough now, hasn't he? Over 18 months. He's been at the club as long as, it doesn't take long to appreciate and look at what is simple about Everton fans. We want a particular Everton team that gives absolutely everything and fights as much as we can. We've got all of our songs about it. Every single traditional Evertonian who goes to Goodison Park has their own interpretation of what Everton's always been about. Songs come at the start, songs come at the end. I think it's an easy win for Sean Dyche, like Warren suggested there, to get behind the fans who are his main asset, like you insinuated there, Warren. It's not a difficult part of the role he has. For instance, his press conference going into tomorrow, we really need the fans to get behind us because we've had a difficult start to the season. Anything like that, any of those sort of words, it did surprise me that he's had that sort of attitude so far in this campaign. Why that may be is the sort of question I'm throwing towards you right now, because it's a kind of sound. If you didn't know that was a game or two into a season, you would not think that it would be that stage if you heard the comments that he's made. And I'm just wondering that. Yes, okay, I understand that there's a frustration on the financial side. He's banged on about that a lot in regards to new owners coming in. But someone like Sean Dyche, he's normally has a straight bat back to questions from the media. Him to come out with what he did, it's more than interesting to hear what he's saying at this particular stage, isn't it?
Yeah, they were strange comments, weren't they? And kind of going back to the point one, and you made before about, as a football manager, Sean Dyche knows far more than what I'll ever do about football management. But on the other hand, I'm a fan. I've watched this club for X number of years, so I have expectations.
He hasn't watched Everton as much as we have he?
Exactly. So I have expectations. I'm allowed to have expectations. It might not be based on reality, but I'm allowed to have expectations as a fan. I pay my season ticket every year based on expectations, based on I'm expecting a positive outcome to the season. I know the tradition of the club. I'm immersed in the tradition of the club. I know what it means to me. I know what it means to my dad, my granddad, my son. I know what it means to everyone. Everyone who's an Evertonian, the whole Evertonian family. I know the history of the club. I've seen us win league titles. I've seen us win European trophies. I've seen us win FA Cups. So I do have an understanding of what the club is about. And I think whether you think my opinion counts for anything or not, it is my opinion, and I think I'm entitled to have that opinion based on my years of watching the club. And so I do get quite annoyed when managers kind of turn on the fans a little bit, as kind of Dyche has on this occasion. We need the fans to support us. We support that club week in, week out, season after season, no matter how. And we've seen some dreadful performances in the Premier League years. Us, the older generation of fans like myself, have seen some really glorious performances in the Football League days. But we are the fans never. The fans can always, whenever Everton need the support of the fans, and we've seen in the past 2 or 3 seasons, the fans have got together and backed the team, which we always do. Now, there will be times during the season when fans express their frustration. Yeah, and that's not a uniquely Everton thing. I'm sure that happened to Burnley, to Sean Dyche as well. But when it comes to the key games, the derby matches, the run into the season, the fans will get behind the club 100%. And going back to what Warren said before there as well, yeah, I think, you embrace this last season, embrace the positivity of this last season. You look at all the displays in the 1878 before the game starts. The atmosphere at home has improved immensely in the past 3, 4, 5 seasons. So I think the manager has to embrace that level of support and get the players to embrace that level of support and get the team to thrive and develop with that level of support behind them as well. I think that kind of the issue. I take your point, both Dave and Warren, about whether he'd be the manager in the new stadium. I really don't know. I think if we grind out the sequence of results this season, finish 16th and 17th, then I can't see him being in charge of Brownlee Dot. If we finish the season on a positive note like we did last year, then I think he's staying the case. And you would have thought, from Sean Dyche's selfish point of view, if he wants to be the manager in the new stadium, he needs to start playing some attractive winning football. To me, that's a given. We've got 52,000 season tickets to sell there. We're not going to sell them in the Championship. So it is important that we stay up. But it's also important that we stay up in the right fashion. We don't be biting our fingernails, do we, come January, February, but on this pod every week, can we get a win here? Will they lose? Are they going to get a point deduction? Have we got enough to hang on? We've done that for the last 3 or 4 seasons. It's kind of getting a bit demoralising now to do that, season in, season out.
It's like a temple, isn't it? You can't do that every season.
You can't.
You'll get caught.
And it's not enjoyable, is it, Dave?
No, absolutely.
It's just not. No one wants to go to a home game with a dreaded feeling in their stomach. One eye on the scores, the other matches on your phone, see what's going on while you're watching our game. You want to be able to sit back, relax, think, we're playing good football here. We've got a good chance of winning. It's entertaining. There's some good young players coming through. I can see there's a plan. There's development of players. That's what you want to see. What you don't want to see is, oh God, he's playing Young again. He's playing Michael Keane again in a must-win match. Because Warren made a very good point there that the team that started against Brighton hadn't really changed from the team sort of 2 years ago, which I hadn't really considered, but that's an excellent point. And then it's part of the thing with Sean Dyche is that, to an extent, he must regard himself as almost untouchable now, because who would actually make the decision for him not to be manager anymore? Who's actually going to make that decision? The club can't afford to pay him off given our financial circumstances at the moment. So he's almost in a situation where he might feel, well, if this is my last season, I'm just going to do it my way. I don't really care about the response. So it's a strange situation. I think I mentioned at the start of this pod that we started the season with fans and the club all going in the same direction. We're only nearly 3 games in, and that seems to have gone. You've got the manager having to go with fans, you've got fans having to go with players, you've got people streaming for the exits before the final whistle, and we've really got to try and bring all that back together again. And I know Frank Lampard didn't do a particularly good job at Everton, but what he did do quite well was bring the fans, align the fans with his vision for the club. And I think the fans accepted some poor performances because they kind of felt Lampard got the club, he got the fan base I don't think Sean Dyche is quite built up that amount of credit with certain elements of the fan base at the moment. So going back to what Warren said, yeah, I think Sean Dyche would definitely keep us up. He's got the know-how, he's got the experience. But do I want another season of grinding out results at home? I expect something better, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that gets to a point where it's sort of that I completely understand what you mean when I go to Goodison. It does get to me the feeling of what's to come. When you talk about the selection there, if you come out with against Brighton, you got a couple of new. I mean, I can't think. It's particularly with younger fans. We're particularly fans of, I don't know, mid-20s. My age, I'm edging towards 40 now, sadly, and I'm at a stage in my life where I want to go and watch Everton there, and I'm excited about new players. I'm excited to see what they're about. I'm excited to see what we've bought. Have we actually done something that is going to be essential for us? And you're looking at players like it feels we used to. I mean, my favourite player, anyone who's listened to us in the past few years that I bang on upon far too much than I should do, is Andre Kanchelskis. Everton were in the doldrums when we got Andre Kanchelskis, and he lit the club alive, in my opinion. One of the finest signings we've ever made. I adored him. I adored having the pleasure to meet him and interview him one time, and I stuck in his every word. When I'm going to bang on about him if I don't shut up. But anyway, the point I'm making there, Warren, is he's got an easy win there, Dyche, hasn't he? By throwing these lads in and everybody thinking, the perfect example is Irabunham when we've seen him in already. He's a fan's favourite immediately. You look at the way in which he played, the half turn that he's constantly on, wants to turn the ball, wants to look forward, wants to find players who can assist with him. Felt a little bit sorry for him when he's done so. He's looking up, he's got space in front of him. And what have you got? You've got not too much in and around him yet. They seem to me, and again, like we've said, we are not football coaches within any professional sense in the game itself. But that is pretty straightforward to me to think I've got a top-class midfield or a potentially top-class midfielder there that already looks better than Onana, by the way. When he's turned and he's looking at players in front of him, I'm thinking, what's he got there? What's the alternative that he's got before we've had? Is it Calvert-Lewin who's been marked by two giant centre-backs, and basically you need to get to the ball to somebody out wide who can whip it in and he's got a chance of scoring a header? That feels to me the limitation that Everton have got right now. Fans don't take to that when it's we're on a knife edge of staying in the Premier League, particularly at the start of the season, and that's where I feel the real comment that Paul's made there is sort of stuck in my mind more than anything else, is that we'll be frustrated about what we see, how Everton play, until we get to a point where it's essential you don't care how we play, because we essentially have to go and get results to stay in the league. And that is where Sean Dyche, my prediction, probably far too much of a prediction I made in our podcast of previews. I said that I don't think Sean Dyche will be Everton's manager by Christmas. And a little bit tongue-in-cheek there. But given what I've just said, given that fans need to see an improvement, they need to see Everton playing something different, they need to be on their toes when they're at Goodison Park. Sean Dyche doesn't have that much credit in the bank, in my opinion. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but Everton fans are patient. We've had to be patient in the last few seasons to stay in the league. But you can't stick like that. I go back to the point I made at the start of the show. That will not stick with you. That will not last you permanently. You will not be able to stay in this division if you do the same thing every season. And that's what he's done.
No, playing the way he does, and there's still a part of me that doesn't care how we play as long as we win. For me, entertaining and free-flowing football is a product of being a great team, and it takes years to build a great team or a very good team. And I think Arsenal are a good example of that. I'm not comparing us to Arsenal in any way, but Arteta's had many years there now, to the point where you look at them and you watch them play, and they are one of the teams in the league that if they're on telly, I'll sit and watch, because generally they are really good on the eye. So you can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden you play attacking, free-flowing football. But at the same time, I do think that it'll get to a point where people just go, I don't want to watch this anymore. I don't want to see this anymore. I'm still at that point where I'm like, I don't care how we win, just get the points we need. But there's only so long that'll keep going the way it will. And like I said earlier, I think moving into this new stadium, if we are still a Premier League club next year, I think that it'll almost demand that you play differently or you are different, and it's not the same old Everton that we used to. It should be a dawning of the new and not, a sort of attachment to the old. So it's going to be difficult for him. I've got some sympathy for him in the sense that we're the best team he's managed in terms of status and heritage and who we are as a club in terms of club size. He did, for my money, he did a good job at Burnley, and he could never change the way he played at Burnley because of who Burnley were and are. He had to play a certain way. Vincent Kompany went in there and tried to be this all new attacking football, playing beautiful one touch, keeping it on the floor, playing it out from the back, and look what happened to them. They got relegated in the first season, back up under him. And then he somehow got the Bayern Munich job. But anyway, that's another story. But the point being is that you've got to play a certain way without the players that you with or without the players you've got to play to your strengths. And Dyche for me is very good at playing his strengths. But you said this in the past, Dave. He's not being tested with better players at a big club to see what he can do at the other end of the table. He's only been given the opportunity to manage teams at the end of the table we are, and credit where credit's due, he's done a good job with that. And going back to what you said about Tim and Abuham as well, I mean, let's give credit where credit's due as well. The club have done brilliant getting a player like that in, and that's the type of players that we're looking to get in. I think the frustrating thing for me as well, if say we'd have won that Brighton game, scrappy 1-0, right, and we comes off someone's backside and it rolls in the 70th minute, and we hold on and we scrape to a 1-0 win. A bit like some of the victories we had last season. I could kind of go, yeah, right, stick with the team. It's a winning team. It'll do what it has to do. And then when these newer players are ready, you made the point there brilliantly. When Tim Abuham gets that ball and he turns and he's made a direct run a couple of yards forward and he's looking one side and he's got Jack Harrison, he's looking the other side and he's got Dwight McNeil, and nothing's really working. And you've got Calvert-Lewin who, if we're to put it mild, just doesn't look. He looks like all the weight of the world is on him in terms of he doesn't know where his future lies, and he doesn't particularly look like he wants to injure himself or doesn't want to, he doesn't want to do anything to jeopardise any potential future he's got with or without us. You look at it and you go, well, if it's not working now, what's the harm with throwing in the newer players? It can't get any worse if we're losing 3-0 at home. So why not try the newer players? And that's where I think people are attacking and stubbornness. If we'd have won that game against Brighton, scrappy 1-0, then his stubbornness would have been, people wouldn't have questioned it. People don't know, but he's stubborn with the side, but you know what, we scraped the win there, so it's fine. But when it doesn't work, doing is, if you want to call it the Dyche way or the Dyche way of playing and his style and his whatever it is, when it doesn't work, fans are legitimately going to go, well, you've just brought all these players in. Why aren't you using them? So it's an interesting one. I think it'll be a really interesting topic as the season goes on regarding Dyche, because I think there will be a question. Has he only got a year after this year on his contract as well? Has he got one more year after this year as well? So you'd think that he'd be looking, or his agents, or his team behind him would be looking and thinking, we need to start talking the future, January, February, March 2025, because I need to know where I'm going to be in the next year or two as well. So it's going to be a real interesting one as the season goes on. I think, though, that for my money, by Christmas, this could be the famous last words, and this could be something that gets clipped and played back to me, but I think for my money, by sort of we head into Christmas time and in the new year, I think we'll find where we are, and we will start picking up points, and we'll see that we are generally not a bad team and we should be lower mid-table. I think that will happen. But as it stands now, it just feels very same old. It feels very frustrating. It feels, you have all the excitement of the new season just ground out of you straight away. as a fan, you come to the stadium to see these new players, to see these new transfers, which is part of the entertainment of it anyway, seeing all these new players, who they are. And we haven't seen that, and all it's done is just built up a frustration. So, like I said, I short term, I don't worry about Dyche. Short term, I don't think he will get too many things wrong in terms of keeping us in the league. Medium to long term, I think there's a very big question mark there. And I think as this season goes on, particular, that question mark will get bigger and bigger, and it'll become more of a source of conversation, not just on this pod or between Everton fans. I think that'll be a source of conversation in the wider footballing community as well. So there's a lot to go off there, but I think in the here and now, it's got to just be, look, where are we going to start picking up these points? Now, the optimist in me thinks that we'll get something against Bournemouth, be that a win or a draw, and then let's have it right. We were all right on the road last year. We picked up a lot more points than we probably used to, and the way we set up suits us away from home when we're not playing one of the so-called bigger teams. So I think the games against Villa will be a tough game, because I think they're a great team at the minute. They've got things, they're on a bit of a roll at the minute. But certainly the Leicester game, when we've got sort of a decent record down there as well, I think we'll start picking up points as September rolls on and into October. And then I think we'll kind of find our way in this league and where we probably will end up being this season, which, as I said, is a mid to lower table team. That's how I see it going forward. But that question mark against Dyche is going to get bigger and bigger as the season goes on, definitely.
Spot on. Just to finish, lads, quick prediction for what's going to happen in tomorrow's game against Bournemouth, which we've banged on about for about 45 minutes. How important this is going to be, given the losses. Paul, I'll come to you first. A quick prediction.
Well, Besso scored at Bournemouth last season, didn't he, in the 2-1 defeat? So seeing I'm hoping Besso's developing a habit of scoring second goals against teams he scored against the previous season, as he did against Doncaster. So I'm expecting a 1-0 win with a deflected knee from Besso pushing the ball over the line. So he's going to scrape a 1-0 win.
You're saying that he's controlling the ball better there by saying it. I do say that in jest, actually. I think he's... he looks slightly better to me against Doncaster. Maybe that's a bit of praise towards the last.
But he tried, didn't he, David? One thing about it, he didn't stop running. His head didn't go down.
Well, that's the one thing you can't complain about. Similar to what you said about Jack Harrison, these lads don't stop working, which is an attribute that they've got, which is an attribute that we're going to need. So I think you might well be right that he might score the odd scrappy goal, a bit like Niasse back in the day. Warren, quick reply from you. Score.
I think Njai comes into the side. I think Irabuman and Njai have great games again. I think we see a bit of an impetus in the Everton side. I think we'll see a bit of a want from them to want to win. And I think we come away with a win. I'm going to say 2-0 Everton.
2 goals, 2 goals seem like a long way off, given what we've seen so far in the Premier League.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I'm telling you.
It'll happen one day.
Let's hope it happens sooner rather than later, lads.
We just saved the 2 goals of Derby matches, don't we?
That's right, yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Scrappy as it gets, yeah. And I think I'm in that sort of bandwagon with you guys. I think we'll get a scrappy win. Hopefully a clean sheet as well. And I'd like to see, I think both of you said about O'Brien getting a first start in the Premier League for us. I'd like to see that ahead of Michael Keane. Depends if Tarkowski's fit, which I think I think it's being said that he is going to be fit. O'Brien next to him is absolutely fine. Let's hope Branthwaite gets back as early as possible as well. That's your weekly, the day before the game. Do let us know how you rate it, what you think about it. Do leave us comments and questions. We love all that. We love to talk about it as much as possible. And we're here every single day of the week, as you know. And you've got the mailbag coming out as well, which is a battle of laughs. I think you're on it with me, Warren, as well, aren't you?
Yeah. Double duty today, yeah.
That's it, mate. Yeah, so it should be a battle of laughs ahead of a bit of a good feeling towards how we go into this game against Bournemouth tomorrow. But thanks for listening to us, as always, and up the toffees.
Thanks, Dave.